Everybody knows that Eternity Vault and Karagas Palace are arguably the easiest operations in our favorite game. But have we ever tried to put all of them in a proper order? Which one would be the hardest? Which one would be the easiest? Well, let's try and figure that out right now. Greetings from Bulgaria, my friends. I'm VULKK, and this title might sound familiar to those of you who have read the blog post that I've created on my website a while back. I've decided to turn it into a video and give it a little bit more voice because I would like to make like a mini discussion maybe on the topic. These 9 positions taken by the 9 available operations in the game might be different for some of you. Let me make a note before we begin. These 9 operations exclude the fake 1 boss ops code Tuboros Courtyard because it is a boss, it is an operation, it gives a reward, but I don't consider that an ops real because an ops needs to feature at least 4, 5, preferably 7 bosses. These numbers are not random. 4 bosses is the de novo operation, 5 bosses are the majority of the operations in our game, and 7 bosses is the Scum and Villainy ops. So let's begin and list them from the easiest, which is number 9, to the toughest, which is number 1. Well, we know what number 1 and 2 are. We know what number 9, we know what number 1 is. We know what number 9 and 8 would be. But I would like to complete and add a little bit more to this with some speculation, some arguments and some explanations. And before I forget, the important note that and I would like you to do as well, consider these operations as a whole. We know that some bosses in these ops are incredibly tough. Some bosses might be much tougher than the whole another operation that might be considered harder than this one we will be discussing. But no, this is an operation as a whole, which features the difficulty combined of all bosses, regardless of whether the second boss might be tougher than the 5th one or anything else like that. I'm doing this note because I'm preparing together with my officer and friend Jim, you know him as Maxine, who is our healer in the operation team. We're preparing a special live discussion coming soon. We haven't decided when exactly, but it's gonna be like a half-an-hour video of me and him discussing a specific top 5 list. And I think it will be very interesting. I hope that you will be entertained and eager to listen to our arguments and reasons of this top 5 list. No, I know I'm not mentioning the name of the top 5 list. So let's begin with the operation. Number 9 is obviously shared with number 8. These are the Eternity Vault and Karagas Palace. They're very close to each other in terms of difficulty, of mechanics, and any kind of a possible checks of DPS and heal, as much as these actually exist in the 2 operations. Pretty much any team should be able to run them with ease. The only challenge could be Eternity Vault's final boss, where in the final phase, Sova, especially when he jumps down, he starts throwing pylons at you. And for a tank who's doing the fight for the first time, it might be a little bit more challenging to position the camera in a proper way, to know the timers, the movement processes, and things like that. And of course, this is I think at least, this is the only half-serious DPS check. Even though if you enrage the boss, you can still take him down with at least 2, even 3 more pylons during his enrage. That all depends on the tank, on the healers, and let's not forget the gear, it's also very important. The more special check for Karagas Palace completion is probably the so-called puzzle boss. This is the big giant droid and the 3 special effects that you can put on him. You know, it's the puzzle where you have specific people assigned to do the puzzle on the 2nd floor, and then you have the rest of the people with the 2 tanks down in the bottom. We do have different phases. The droid is building armor stacks and buffs and debuffs. The longer you continue DPSing him after you burn him with the fire or with the gas or with whatever else is available, the droid starts building defensive cooldown, defensive boosts and buffs, and you do less and less DPS, provoking you and forcing you to do the puzzle again and bring him under the next node. You have 3 available nodes where you spray fire or electricity on him. But pretty much that's the only tough boss in there. Every other boss is more or less straightforward, or at least I consider them so. Yes, the first boss is a little bit funny because you can't really tank him. The rancor turns sometimes in a random pattern. Sometimes people believe that he turns according to DPS and threat table. No, it really is random, or at least for 5 years of doing this operation, I could not doubtlessly prove to myself and everybody else around that this boss works on a mechanic. It seems random. Yes, I know you might believe different, but if you prove to me that it's different and why is it different, I would be forever grateful, and I would definitely acknowledge my mistake. The next in my order is, surprise, surprise, Terror from Beyond. Yes, it's not the operation released right after Eternity Vault and Karagas Palace, but that is for a reason. What special do we have in Eternity Vault? It's most likely the third boss that needs to be highlighted. It is the also called puzzle boss. Yes, it is kind of a puzzle, but that's just for hard mode. And remember, we're discussing here because it says in the title and in the thumbnail hard mode. Let me quickly explain to you why I've decided to structure them only because of based on the hard mode difficulty and mechanics. It is because story mode is, forgive me for saying it if you are one of these people who struggle with the story mode, but it's boringly, stupidly easy. And Nightmare is an area that very few people go to, and very few people have bothered even attempting to do the Nightmare now or years ago. I'm one of those players who has defeated all of the bosses in Nightmare. I've completed pretty much all of the Nightmare achievements minus the speed run on Dread Palace, for example. And yes, I've not done 16 man in Dread Palace Nightmare ever. Never attempted it because we didn't have the people required. But those of you who were around patch 2.8 might remember why people didn't want to bother with that too much. Because of the bugs. I'll save you the trouble and I'll tell you the quick answer. Okay, so TFB, it's one of my more favorite operations because it features different bosses with different interesting encounters and mechanics. The third boss is the so-called puzzle, and the DPS checks are really non-existent there, especially in hard mode. The final boss, which is the Terror from Beyond, that monster that drags you into a very different place, universe, I don't know how to call it. It requires research and a lot of testing because there are specific platforms and you need to get used to the mechanics attached to these platforms, where the tanks need to be positioned, how to kill the adds, the tentacles that spawned, how to kill the spheres that spawn in between the tentacles, the so-called transition phases. Yes, it is a tough boss, but group-wise, mechanic-wise, and team play-wise, mostly because of the team play-wise, I think the third boss could prove the biggest challenge, specifically due to the second phase requirements, where you need to cover these deletion protocols, you know, the colored circles between one person and second person. Okay, moving on, the next in the table is Explosive Conflict. This is one of the best operations, at least according to my opinion. It is the home of my favorite boss encounter as well. It's the third one. Forgive me if I don't remember, I haven't done that ops in a while and I forgot the name of the boss. Was it Commander Vorgath or something similar? You can laugh at me for claiming this one to be my favorite boss and then not remembering the name, but yeah, it's the Minefield. Third boss in Explosive Conflict on the Nova is the Minefield. In hard mode, it's the most challenging because the pattern is still random and the mechanics are a huge step up compared to story mode, the DPS requirements as well. It is a huge step up in terms of team play, according to all of the three operations and all of their bosses I've mentioned so far. That's why EC, Explosive Conflict, is one step above Terror from Beyond, even though Explosive Conflict was released like 4, 5, 6 months before TFB. I don't really remember the timings anymore, but yes, Explosive Conflict was the first one released after the launch operations EV and KP. The final boss is tricky for the Nova. It is Kefes himself. This is the first time we see Kefes, and if you've done any operations in the game, or if you've spent more than 15 minutes on any of the fleets, on any of the servers, you know at least a little bit about Kefes, and my god, who doesn't love Kefes? For me, he's personally my favorite mob in the game number 2, because my number 1 is obviously the guy sitting behind me. Well, you can't see it right now because I don't film myself with the webcam, but behind me I have 2 figurines of Vader and 2 figurines of Malgus. Darth Malgus is my number 1 favorite character, villain more specifically, from Star Wars The Old Republic. Next in line we have the Dread Fortress and the Dread Palace. They kind of share the same slot, because not only because they were released at the same time, but because the challenge is actually pretty similar in hard mode. That is, in Nightmare there is a huge step up, at least I consider it to be so, between the last boss in Fortress and the last boss in Palace. But in hard mode the challenges are very similar, and compared to when these operations were first launched and released, a lot of the challenges have been dumbed down and made easier, or as we like to call them, nerfed. So both operations introduce interesting and new mechanics. For most of their 10 bosses, we have 5 bosses in Fortress and 5 bosses in the Palace. Draxus is a pain in the ass to learn for a new team. Draxus is the second boss in the Fortress, but if you don't switch roles all the time, every week and every day, the patterns for each one of the waves are actually easy to remember, and once you remember them, the boss fight becomes really easy. If you keep rotating your team and team players, that would not be easy, because every week you have to explain the same mechanics to different people, and that's never easy. Brontes is the final boss for the Fortress, and she has a lot of phases, but she is very doable, much easier compared to the final boss of Scum and Villainy, for example, which is the next operation I'm going to talk about. In the Palace, you should expect probably greater challenge from the third boss. You know, it requires team play and coordination, because in hard mode, BioWare doesn't give you clues as to where to put the crystal, where the tree grows, and things like that. You know, it's the boss with the phases. The fourth one in hard mode is actually a decent DPS and heal check. The fourth boss in the Palace is very dangerous, and it is possible to get your tanks one-shotted. This is the only time where, depending on your gear availability, it might actually be good and useful to gear up your tank with HP. Gearing up for HP is ridiculously wrong idea by default, but depending on your gear availability, again, what kind of a gear you have access to, this boss might be the only moment in the whole game where your tank might benefit from an HP heavy gear. Let's move on. The next step is Scum and Villainy. Scum and Villainy comes at number 3, if you've lost the count already, and it is the longest operation in Star Wars The Old Republic. Not specifically by time required to complete, but because it contains 7 boss encounters, and most of them have very neat and fun, entertaining mechanics. I put this operation as number 3, counting from easiest to hardest, because of the final boss. Starek is a very decent DPS check in hard mode at level 65. He was kind of tough in hard mode when the operation launched, and he was incredibly tough in the Nightmare version. He probably is again, but as I've told you, I've defeated all of these bosses in Nightmare in their appropriate levels when the operations were launched, and I still haven't bothered after 4.0 with the Nightmares, except for some bosses here and there, just because people drag me. That's a different topic, of course. I will not continue on it anymore. Starek is a very good DPS check and a team play check. There are phases where you need people to coordinate between each other, especially when you get those 4 guys spawning and you need to be melee. Immediately you need people to go and jump melee. You need, during the apparition phase, people who are capable of pushing back if the DPS is low. You might actually consider switching to a 5th DPS instead of 2 tank, or gearing your second tank as an off tank with DPS gear and a DPS build and just capable of off taunting whenever that's needed. And so we come to number 2 and number 1. You know that the only 2 operations left are the Ravagers and the Temple. Everybody knows that Reven is by far the most difficult boss encounter in the whole game. Yes, it is in hard mode, because these 2 operations never got and never will get a Nightmare mode, because BioWare said so, not because I think so. But Reven is really challenging, not so much in DPS and heal requirements anymore. No, that's actually being dumbed down a lot at level 65. But the mechanics and the team play, and to some extent the classes you bring there, make a huge difference and are very important as a whole, as a combination, to determine whether you have easy fun and enjoyable time against Reven or a nightmare. In our case, you've recently saw my first kill of the Reven encounter, because we went there with a totally, how should I say it, unideal or unrecommended group of classes. We brought our favorite classes, we brought generally a very good balance of classes, just not a suitable ones for Reven. And of course we went there without any preparation. Nobody of us has ever defeated it. Many of our guys in our team and in our guild have actually never completed half of the operations in hard mode, let alone for nightmare mode. And we really have a lot of fun building the team and fighting Reven. So yes, by personal experience and by reading, researching, watching other videos, reading articles and God knows what else, this is by far the toughest operation. But let's not skip number 2, because that's the Ravagers. Ravagers does present a few challenges. To me personally, boss number 3 used to be a huge challenge, but after they nerfed the DPS requirements, it's a lot easier now. I believe they did that straight for 4.0. Or maybe was it 4.1? No, I think they did it right away with the expansion launch. Torque, the mad raging Wookiee, became so much easier. And before that, a few months earlier, they actually nerfed the fires. They made them smaller, and with a different animation effect, they removed the smoke from the small room. That smoke was just insanely fun. Yes, it is also frustrating until you kill the boss for the first time, but after you do that, you realize the fight is not such a horrible nightmare, and it really is fun to do. The final 2 bosses in the Ravagers are fun and challenging, but they've also been nerfed to hell. And I will talk about those probably in the very near future, because I don't have video kills on them yet, simply because I've never killed the final boss. And back at level 60, before we stopped raiding the Ravagers, we've reached 4 out of 5, so I don't really have personal first-hand experience from Koratani. But people who have defeated it have shared with me their personal experience. Yes, Koratani is a lot weaker than what she was. Not just she, but the whole boss encounter and all the mechanics involved in that kill. They're much dumbed down and nerfed. So Ravager still takes number 2 in order of difficulty, but Temple of Sacrifice, well, if you want to take second boss, a lot of requirements in team play between the 2 tanks, coordination between the healers and all the other DPSs bringing the bombs and other things like that. Third boss is still a challenge, even though the DPS of the odds has been brought down to laughable amount. The DPS required to kill the odds is also being nerfed a lot. You can very easily bring a 5th DPS in your group and defeat the Underlurker, or as I like to call it at level 60, because of the many bugs in this encounter, the Underbugger or the Buglurker, whichever one suits you better, or whichever one you can pronounce better. Fourth boss was a total nightmare in Temple of Sacrifice, because at level 60 it was an easy 5.5 minutes of farming trash, and then an incredibly tough burn phase in the very end when all 3 bosses jump down and you start spawning odds and everything else. Right now at level 65 this is another one encounter who has been nerfed a lot, and therefore it's a lot easier. Many groups I've heard, including mine of course, have defeated those every week from just 1 attempt, while as at level 60 we often wiped even after the first kill. And then we come to Reven. I don't think I have anything else to add to the Reven fight. I have been considering to make a quick video guide based on my video kill about Reven, but I'm still unsure if it will be beneficial and if you, my subscribers, or people who haven't subscribed yet, need such a video. Well, that's my list. Number 9, Eternity Vault. Number 8, Karagas Palace. Number 7, Terror from Beyond. Number 6, Explosive Conflict. Number 5, Dread Fortress. Number 4, Dread Palace. Number 3, Scum and Villainy. Number 2, The Ravagers. And number 1, Temple of Sacrifice. I do have a written article with pretty much the shorter version of what I just told you in these 20-ish minutes. Wow, I've been talking for 20 minutes. That's what happens when I don't have an exact script to read and follow. I sit in front of the microphone and I cannot stop talking. But those of you who enjoy my accent and understand it and remained until the end of the video, I thank you. I definitely would absolutely value your opinion, so share it down below in the comments. Let me know if you have a different order. I'm sure that not everybody is going to agree with the 9 positions I've selected here. Maybe someone would absolutely insist on including tomorrow here, because it's called an operation with a weekly lock. Even though I absolutely refuse to call it an operation, but personal feelings aside, it might be number 10 or something, I don't know. Let me know what your list is, and don't forget about that special video I've hinted or kind of announced actually, with me and Jim. Coming very soon. It's gonna be a discussion, probably live discussion, so follow my channel and watch when I publish and when I schedule the live show. Don't miss it, because if there is enough of you and you pose interesting questions or we start an interesting discussion, we might turn this into a longer than 20-30 minute video. That was me rambling on for 20 plus minutes for hard mode operations order by difficulty in Star Wars The Old Republic. If you would like to support me, don't forget to use my Amazon links when you purchase things from Amazon. It costs absolutely nothing for you as an extra, but it does give me a small kickback with which I'm able to support my website and pay the monthly bills for the hosting. Or if you really have some money to spare, consider becoming my patron or patron on patreon.com. This is my long-running campaign, thanks to which I'm able to upgrade my website, my hardware, my capabilities, my sound. The most recent purchase I've made was a sound and a hard drive, because recording videos in a ultra high quality is not cheap. Thank you once again for staying with me, and I will see you with the next video. Bye bye. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If so, click the like button and help me out. Also leave a comment and let me know what you think. Visit my website VULKK.com for daily videos and news, and stay in touch by following me on Facebook and Twitter. To help me improve and expand, consider becoming my patron with a small monthly pledge.